Hello and welcome back to another in-depth weather video. Today we are going to be covering Winter Storm Malcolm, which has been named by the Weather Channel. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell. Now let's get right on into it. So this is the Weather Channel. They made a news article about this storm system. So at a glance, the storm system will bring snow, strong winds, and colder temperatures to the plains and Midwest. The snow might contribute to travel delays Thursday into Friday, and the system has blasted the Northwest and Rockies with damaging winds earlier this week. And there was a crazy video about those winds blowing a silo across a field, which is telling about how strong these winds are. So, blizzard conditions may develop in parts of the plains. We have the ingredients there, strong winds, and we also have that snow. We do have blizzard warnings in effect. Then, this system has been named Winter Storm Malcolm by the Weather Channel. Now, here are the alerts. We're going to take a look at that on the National Weather Service page. Now, this is the Weather Channel's forecast. They have a lot more mix here than most of the models agree upon. I think most of this will be snow, maybe a thin layer of some sleet and some ice, but most of this will be snow, and that's why we have those blizzard warnings. We have wind alerts. Those are areas that won't be getting any snowfall, but you're still going to get those high winds. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Wind forecast. This is very telling about how this storm is going to function. You have the low pressure over here, and it's just going to be pulling in those strong winds, and behind that, some very cold temperatures. Now, going into Friday, we get this storm starting to evolve here as we kind of get this wraparound effect, some snow. The low pressure is like right over here. Then we start to see the Northeast try and get into some of that snow. The I-95 corridor will not be affected by that. It will be mostly the interior Northeast that gets any snow. Now, Saturday, you can see that the largest threat for snow is now in New York and northern New England. This is the Weather Channel's forecast for snow. Most of the models have this area kind of debated upon, as well as some of the intensities. So, we'll take a look at that a little bit later as well. So, yeah, and then they just talk about some of those northwest impacts. So that is mostly it for this. Let's move on over to the National Weather Service. So, the National Weather Service, we have this area in red here. That is blizzard warnings. That's the biggest threat with this storm system is blizzard conditions. We're not going to get like super heavy snowfall. We're not going to get a major icing event, but we have that combination of some moderate snow with some very strong winds, and that's where we get those blizzard warnings. We have a few winter storm warnings, but mostly that is for some moderate snow. Then we have plenty of winter weather advisories. Now, these alerts will be extending through the Northeast probably over the next day or two because of this storm system. It will kind of stall out over the Great Lakes region before it moves into the Northeast. We also have those high wind warnings from Montana down to Kansas, and then we actually have wind advisories stretching all the way down into Texas. And that tells you how those cold temperatures will be transported. We have that broken polar vortex that'll be giving more ease of access to those cold temperatures across the U.S. So, let's quickly go over the chances of seeing certain amounts of snowfall. This is the chance of seeing 1 inch of snowfall or more. We're looking for these 95%. That means that it's almost definite that you're going to get at least 1 inch in a 24-hour period. So we have that currently in some spots across South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. If we move across, that area gets a little bit broader now, and you can see the target zone for the northern plains kind of taking shape here in parts of eastern South Dakota, southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, and western Wisconsin. Now, as the storm system starts to move and kind of branches out into the Northeast, we're going to see this focus shift from over here to over here. But right now, with this 24-hour period ending on Saturday, we still have that target zone in Minnesota and Iowa. Now, if we move across a little bit, you start to see this start to weaken. Some areas across the northern Great Lakes region kind of get into the 80-90 percentile. Then you start to look into the northeast, and that threat starts to grow in here. Now, I think that the snow that will be falling in the northeast will be gradual, and it's also pretty far out, so we will have to kind of take a more definitive look at that in the models. Now, speaking of the models, let's actually go to the NAM model. So, this is the NAM 12-kilometer model. So, let's take a look at the forecast loop for this storm system. We have this low pressure here in Canada. That'll be weakening and dying out. Now we have this low pressure here in Minnesota. This is the one that we have to watch. You could also see these black lines over here. Those isobars are getting closer together. That it usually means that there's higher winds in those areas. Now, these blue lines here indicate temperature. You can see that there is a streamline of cold air behind this system from Canada. Now, once you get over here, this is approximately 9 o'clock tonight. You start to get this low pressure strengthening. Those isobars get closer on the back half, and that is where we could see some blizzard conditions. Now, as the storm system kind of rotates throughout the day on Friday, you start to see that cold air kind of wrap around that low pressure, which will bring in some snowfall for parts of the southern Great Lakes region. Maybe not much, but just a little bit there to make some travel impacts, maybe some slick roads. Now, we also start to see this cold front here, and that generates some rain on that side. We also can see that the low pressure is actually weakening as it kind of gets more developed. Now, the low pressure will develop off the coast of North Carolina or up into the northeast in general. That will be taking most of this moisture here and kind of strengthening it to make some major snowfall impacts in the interior northeast. You can see that low pressure develops right here off the coast of North Carolina, Virginia. That'll be moving to the north here, and that is where you get most of your heavier snowfall totals, especially in upstate New York. Now, you will be also getting some heavy rain totals across the I-95 corridor, making your Saturday a little bit more rough for travel if you are traveling this Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. Will be pretty rough in the southern New England area. Now, this low pressure goes pretty deep into the northeast and starts to kind of stall out here as well. And this is where you have most of the discrepancy, which is if this low pressure stalls out here, you'll get more of a mix and some ice in northern Maine, and that seems to be most believable right now, especially with the past of this storm at that point. Now, this starts to roll out, but you can see that there's a little clipper system behind it. I did not factor that into any snow totals. Now, let's go down here to the winds. We have this windy area over here. That is the major area where we have to look to see where does the snow coincide with the wind. And that is right about here where those blizzard warnings are. Now, we usually want like 20 to 30 knot winds, and we do have those here. And especially as this strengthens, you get more into like those upper 20s. That is when you could really see the possibility of getting a blizzard. Remember, a blizzard is 30-mile-an-hour sustained winds for 3 hours straight. So once this system moves out of the plains, you kind of remove that blizzard threat. Now, in terms of temperature, we can see that the temperature is greatly colder, much colder behind this storm system. You get this inflow of cold air. This is areas such as Minnesota 16 degrees, and that continues into the northeast. You could see this whole pool here kind of dip into the northeast as well. So let's move on to different models here. GFS model, going here to the forecast loop. So the GFS takes this storm system a little bit weaker overall, and has most of the heavy snowfall happening in northern New England. Now, the GFS has not been as accurate of late with these storms, so we do have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. Now, the European model, which is usually the most accurate global model, has this storm system pretty strong and pretty similar to the NAM model, and the only difference here is that it doesn't have that mix in the northeast. Now, I usually trust the NAM model a little bit more than the European model, since this is a shorter range model. Now, the NAM has, let's actually switch to snow totals for all three of these models and compare them. Remember, the European model does not have available that total accumulated snowfall, so we're just going to use snow depth. So the NAM model shows the target zone here in northern New York, with areas getting 12 to 14 inches, but you have this second target zone in areas such as South Dakota, even parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, getting a decent amount here, 6 to 12 inches across the board. Now, you can see that in the northeast, everything is interior, and you will see higher snow totals at higher elevations, which is pretty normal, pretty standard for these types of storms, and pretty much any storm. Now, the GFS takes a little bit of a different route, has that target zone pretty much only in areas such as Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. Doesn't have that cohesive amount of snowfall in the northeast, kind of leaves that more to Canada for those higher snow totals. Now, the European model, if we go over here, kind of combines the two, but it also has an area of higher snow totals in areas such as Wisconsin and Illinois, but that is because there's currently snow on the ground there, so we have to kind of subtract that amount, and you get kind of a 6-inch snow total there. So let's head over to my predictions and see what I kind of combined with the models here. Here are my predictions for this storm. So let's start off with snow. I have a broad area of less than 3 inches of snow from North Dakota all the way up through Maine. I also have an area of 3 to 6 inches of snow. I have 2 of them, or actually 3 of them. One here in parts of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, even Nebraska and Kansas, Missouri, up through Illinois into Wisconsin and Michigan. I also have another area in the Appalachian Mountains from North Carolina, kind of takes a little bit of a break there in some lower elevations, then up through New York and Vermont, and then another area in parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. 6 to 12 inches, I have a larger area here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, which is pretty standard across all three models. Then you have this little area in West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. That's because those are a little bit higher elevations, and we see certain, with most snowstorms, you see usually a little bit more snow in this area. Then you have this area in New York getting 6 to 12, and even some areas getting 12 plus. Just where those bands set up, this can differ a little bit. Now, for blizzard conditions, I have this red outline. This is the best chance for blizzard conditions, just overlaying the snow with the high winds. That kind of seems to be the overlay there. Now, for rain, I have a pretty decent area in the south here, getting a ½ inch plus, or less than a ½ inch actually, from Illinois out east to Maryland and down south to Florida. I also have an area in Maine. I do not have snow in northern Maine. I think that you'll see mostly rain or a mix, since that low pressure will be moving through into northern Vermont and into Canada. Now, my actual half-inch plus is from southern half of Maine down to areas of the Delmarva. Now, this area here will be getting that half an inch plus, maybe even up to 2 inches of rainfall within about a 24-hour period. So definitely some messy driving conditions in this area. This would be on Saturday. So that is all I have for the storm. Comment in the comment section down below. Do you think that my predictions are accurate? Do you think that this will be what actually happens? Or do you agree with one of the 3 models that I have previously shown? But that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.